Have you been unconsciously following the narcissist's rules? From our childhood, our parents had unspoken rules in the house. You probably had parents that had very specific ways of how they wanted to live their life, and they expected you to conform to these rules. And when I think of some of the rules in my family, it comes really apparent to me, like if I write them down. For example, we only talk about superficial things. Mother or father controls the conversation and chooses the topics. Vulnerability is not allowed. Feelings are not talked about or expressed. Feelings are shamed, dismissed, or minimized. Mother or father decides when the conversation is finished. Children's needs and boundaries are not respected. If there was a sign hanging outside my house, that's probably would have said, it would have said, these are the rules of the house. But of course, these rules were not written down anywhere. It was all, these rules were taught to us in a very, through their shaming, through their invalidation, through their criticism and their fear mongering. We became conditioned to just go along with our parents' usually unhealthy way of doing things. So for example, a very simple one is just, if you're a young child and you're crying and you're upset, but your parents say, oh, it's not that bad, or don't worry. And if you hear that a number of times, you start to realize or believe, you become conditioned that, expressing emotions is not okay in this house. And then, it goes on and on. For example, maybe you try to speak to your parent about, something that's going on for you at school or some struggle, you're having. But again, your parent just maybe doesn't respond to you, or, maybe they just kind of make light of it, and you start getting the message, okay, I can't really talk about my inner experiences, can't have, deep conversations with my mother. So I'll just keep it kind of light and on the surface, because that seems to be what's allowed here. And so we get these really, these, and when we're children, we're just taking everything in. We're not consciously, thinking about these rules. We just internalize them. So we start just living from that, and thinking that's how things are done. And we take that on to other relationships too. Like we just think, oh, well, this is how I did it in my family, and I guess this is the way. And we never, because our needs and feelings are also invalidated and not respected, then, we don't even think that, oh, I have the right to set a boundary, because in our family, that was another rule, that we didn't have the right to have boundaries. We really get the idea that, our needs don't matter, our feelings don't matter, our opinions don't matter, our ideas don't matter. Sometimes even our preferences don't matter. And that leads us to believe that we don't matter. That's what we start to believe in our family. And we're taught, or we're conditioned to just try to seamlessly fit in, to kind of be invisible and just be quiet, don't speak up, and there's all these very, subconscious things going on. And narcissistic parents, really, I think they just have children so that they can feel power and superiority over someone. I think that's the only reason, because once you start to push a little bit, once you start to say, hey, wait a minute, that's not okay for me, or I really need this. That you might be shocked and saddened to find out that you know, they might just discard you because they really don't, they're not capable of doing those things that you want. You know, they're not capable of depth. They're not capable of empathy. They're not capable of you know, thinking about someone else's needs and changing themselves a little bit in order to meet those needs. They're just not capable. Yeah, so I was just thinking of like an alcoholic parent, you know, calling their child when they're drunk, and then the child speaking, or the, you know, the adult child speaking up and saying, you know, I really, you know, that's not okay for you to speak up to me, you know, to speak to me when you're drunk. So please don't call me unless you're sober, or I don't want to talk to you unless you're sober. And, you know, the narcissistic drunk parent would say, you know, oh, you're hurting me and I can't believe you're doing this. And after all that I've done for you, and you should just accept me as I am. And they'll, you know, they'll give you a big guilt trip. And that's often their defense is then giving you a guilt trip for setting a boundary. They'll try to get you to feel guilty, get you to feel selfish, or maybe imply that you're being too needy. So that way, again, they're trying to control you and talk you out of setting that boundary and holding that boundary. So we can develop a lot of guilt. Like when I first started setting boundaries, I felt so guilty. I really had this feeling like this is wrong, this is bad, I should not be setting this boundary. Like it just felt really, like it was really hard for me, especially like setting boundaries at work. So it's important to know that this is a false guilt that we experience, and we experience this because none of our boundaries were respected as a child. And we again, were conditioned to believe that my needs and feelings, it's not even that they're not important, but they're not even valid, and they're like speaking up about those things is wrong and is bad. And yeah, so it's, if you're having feelings of guilt around this, know that it's completely normal, completely natural, and also that this feeling of guilt is completely false, that you have the right to speak up for your needs. You have a right to voice and express your feelings. And that doesn't mean the other person is necessarily going to respect those boundaries, but you have every right to set those boundaries and hold those boundaries. And I feel like one really good exercise to do is to, write down what you think, you know, the rules in your family were. And on another page, write down what you think your rules in your house would be. And I think it's an interesting exercise to see how you might have been, you know, following your parents' rules really unconsciously. And it's really important to know that it's not your fault, and that we were, you know, conditioned to play small and to be this kind of unnoticed non-person, really. You know, so it's really a sad thing. And so it takes, of course, lots of grieving to really, you know, once you start processing this, and then to, you know, feel what you know, the hurt and the anger and the sadness of that. So it's a process, but you do have a right to live your life your way, according to your core values. And you have a right to have relationships with people who also have, very similar kinds of rules and boundaries and limits in their life. So just remember that your needs matter, your feelings matter, and you matter. So that's what I wanted to tell you today. I am Davina Shamaya, and just like you, I am recovering from complex post-traumatic stress disorder and narcissistic abuse. And I am wishing you many, many blessings on your journey of healing and awakening. And you can find me at Boldness Blooming. And I appreciate any of your comments or questions. So thank you so much for watching today.